It is Dominion 2024. El Desperado finally captures the best of the Super Junior tournament. Jon Moxley defends the IWGP Championship and learns the identity of his next challenger. Plus, there is a new concept for the G1 Climax. We're breaking down all the news from the big show in Osaka. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome to this special edition of Speaking of Strong Style. I'm Steven Conway. With me, of course, Jeremy Finestone. We're contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. We got up bright and early this morning, had our coffee and our tea, and watched Dominion 2024, and it turned out to be a pretty darn good wrestling show, Jeremy. I was happy with this at the end, and of course, we're going to break this card down match by match. A lot of news. But just in general, I turned this thing off thinking, okay, this felt a little bit more like the New Japan I love. I felt there was a lot of sensical booking. I thought there were some good stories told. Things are leading to other things. It's a little more like it. Feels a little more focused, and maybe I'm kind of overreacting to it. But as I turned off the show today, I felt much better about the direction than, say, I felt 2 months ago.
I do feel better about the direction. I will say that I think I'm more excited for the immediate future and what is going to be on these cards rather than like the general direction of the company. Everything is going in the right direction and everything is like that. I am just excited for the immediacy and the relevancy of the New Japan Soul cards and what they're doing with the G1, which we'll go into as we'll announce at Dominion today. And basically just the show in general. I didn't blow me away or anything. There were matches on there that I absolutely loved. But as a whole, it was just a very good card.
I didn't think there was a bad match on the whole show.
No.
There were some that were better than others, certainly, but I didn't think there was a bad match, and a lot of things that are leading to other things. And so, again, I just wanted something that I could grab a hold of and say, okay, I think they have an idea of where they're going now, where I felt like things were pretty scattershot at the beginning of the year. Colin, glad you're with us. Thank you for joining us. Flaming Shark will be here later, he told us, but he has some thoughts and left them with us, and we'll read those off to you as it becomes appropriate to do so. Thank you all for spending a little bit of your Sunday with us. We're glad you are. And should we just roll, Jeremy, and get right into this card? Any other final thoughts before we start breaking down match by match?
I think when the worst match on the card is the King of Pro Wrestling card, and even that wasn't even a bad match, I think it's a card you should make time for it in general. It's probably how we start this thing out. Do you want to start at the bottom or the top?
No, let's go with match number one, and let's just roll through these things. I think we should start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start, as Julie Andrews once sang.
I got you, bud.
All right. Well, we began with Tetsuya Naito and Callum Newman, and we had an idea that this would be a lot of fun. It was. Callum Newman got the jump start and got a triangle moonsault like right off the bat. So this is when I looked at this and thought, okay, this is going to be mostly Naito then, because they're giving him a shine very early in this. Indeed, he did I found out that the running Destino, the one that's not quite a Destino, like there are different levels of Destinos. There's the one where he grabs the arm, does the full-on thing. That's usually the finish. Then there's the one he does kind of suddenly. That's called the Corriendo, the running Destino, as it turns out. Chris Charlton finally named that. And that was he gave Newman a little bit here, but Naito's night was not over at this point, and we suspected that it was not. He ended up lining up Newman for a Destino. Newman was out on his feet, barely throwing elbows. The end came when they spit on one another out of defiance, but Naito hit his finish and won. He did put on his LIJ baseball cap and tipped it to Newman after, so a little bit of a sign of respect from Naito to Newman for the struggle. But in the end, Naito had bigger fish to fry, but a decent opener. Nothing wrong with it.
I really, really liked it. Did you at all, or when I say to you, this kind of felt like a G1 match or like a teaser for what the G1 is going to offer, did you get any kind of sense when you were watching this match?
I think that if they were probably, if they end up in the same block, then they should
Mhm.
definitely save some things. The point of this match was not to do the blow off, blow away,
No.
end the night big anyway. This was an opening match. Naito was going to be coming out later on. So this was strictly for everybody to get a chance to see these guys do a few moves, but not give away the store here. So yeah, I definitely felt like there was a little bit of a holdback thing. So it didn't feel like a G1 match to me in that sense. But it did make me feel
okay. Maybe not for Naito, but I felt like Callum Newman was like putting on a like what he could do in a G1 kind of thing, like almost an audition for him.
Well, he certainly wanted to show he was worthy of this spot, and it turns out that he was, which we respect.
Yes, I felt like the motivation for both, because Naito wanted to look good for what he had going on later on tonight, and Callum Newman, because frankly, after the Shi'i match, I'm convinced he's committed to making the best of his minutes. This is a hidden gem of a match, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it was good work, and but I do think that if they do a 15-minute match in the G1, it's going to be a heck of a lot better than this one, and this wasn't bad. I'm not knocking it, but I do feel like there were a few things held back. These
two will be dance partners in the future. I'm almost positive of it.
I could see Naito saying something like, "We're gonna be doing this later, kid. Let's save the good stuff for that in a bigger spot." So that'll be it. Brad is here. Yeah, glad to see Brad. We haven't been able to talk to Brad live in a while. Dunstan is here. We appreciate everybody showing up. This is cool. I'm glad.
Check in the chat if you're here. We'll shout you out.
Sure, we will. And absolutely. And Brad mentions that the respect nod at the end was very interesting. I wonder where it's going. So it could be as much babyface Naito, or I don't think this is over with either. Like I said, I would not be surprised at all if these two are going to end up in the same G1 block and we get to do this again. TMDK, this is a little preview of the junior heavyweight tag team title match, and we saw LJ Cleary from Noah joining up with the War Dogs. So this was Drilla Maloney, Clark Connors, and LJ from the Good Looking Guys faction in Noah. That's the Alliance, GLG, and the War Dogs. On the other side, we had TMDK team of Zack Sabre Jr., Kosei Fujita, Robbie Eagles. And this was Cleary's NJPW debut, first time he's been on the blue mat, and they were. They have gotten the Drillakilla over so much, Jeremy, that each time he even teased he was going to do it, it got a shriek from the crowd. So big ups to both Drilla Maloney and New Japan as a whole for getting that move so over right now that people kind of
keep telling you, Drilla, he's got something.
He really does.
The reacts to him.
In the end, though, this was all about TMDK. Zach made Cleary look good for a little while, but then hit the Zack driver to win. It was a good match. Sets up the junior tag title match we're going to be getting at NJPW Seoul, and everybody got a little bit of shine right here.
There was a little bit of a mirror from the first match with Zack and LJ Cleary, because you had LJ spending a majority of the match just taunting Zack, just trying to get his goat and whatever. And then once Zack tagged in and got his hands on him, there was an utter decimation, and you saw a main event level and a guy lower on the card, and you saw exactly what was going to happen when those two have a one-on-one match. And it felt kind of a parallel, which I thought was interesting with Zack and Naito.
Yeah, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of this back and forth between Noah and New Japan. We mentioned it on Thursday. It's something we're going to talk about when we get closer to the Forbidden Door preview, is already within 3 years, the concept of a Forbidden Door completely passé. Is there any point to even the term? Because it is, thankfully for fans, it's good for us. It's become very commonplace for these people to show up on each other's shows. It's not even unusual for there to be a Noah presence on a New Japan show. If you watch New Japan or Noah on Wrestle Universe, and I do, they certainly have a heavy New Japan presence on it, and will continue to do so. We're going to talk about that in a little while, because we almost had to sweep up Kiyomiya with a squeegee earlier today. Thanks, Gabe. But the point I'm trying to make here on this one is I like this. It's fun to have these guys coming back and forth. And so the idea of LJ Cleary and Zack maybe tangling in a Noah ring, that's very, very possible. And something that we might see on some of their weekly shows or whatever it is. It's a fun time when you can just bring a guy in from another company and it could lead somewhere else and not just be a one-off.
Zack's going to be the world tour guy that Ospreay was last year. I'm telling you, he's going to be everywhere doing everything. He's already doing the CML. CMLL, that whole thing. I was just laughing while you were explaining your Forbidden Door frustration of how it's been watered down, because it reminded me, like, it's basically a portal now, and in like 2018, 2019 WWE, and they had the separate brands, but everyone was coming over to the other ones, and they would create these arbitrary like reasons or excuses or new bylaws to make it so that it was okay that this person showed up instead of just respecting the sanctity of the own rules that they've set. I just kills me.
Well, I mean, and getting onto that Forbidden Door thing being completely passe, even WWE is working with TNA right now. I mean, like, there is no forbidden anything anymore. I mean, anything might happen right there. Just a lot of things. Yeah, so, but anyway, good match, a good trios match in the middle of the card right there. Then we had our first title match of the night, and this was the King of Pro Wrestling match. It was done under let's see, Storm Catch rules. So what did that mean? That was no strikes, 15-minute time limit. And so we're talking grappling, suplexes and things. That's fine. 2 rope breaks or exits from the ring, a third by any one person. And it was a disqualification, not just that the rope break wasn't allowed, but you were actually DQ'd. To put over the idea, Great-O-Khan came down wearing more like boxing type of shorts and wrestling shoes instead of his usual gear. Uemura started the match, went right to a submission and a suplex, then another submission to establish the stipulations. Great-O-Khan, would Great-O-Khan have to burn one of his rope breaks very early? That's something that's often missed in North American wrestling, and I'm not picking on any one company but you have a stipulation match, and then you don't use the stips until, you have to establish the stipulations early in the match. I think that's healthy for one of these things, just to remind the fans, we got to keep score of these rope breaks. We got to pay attention. They did a good job of establishing that, I felt, early in this. And then I thought the match was fairly well worked. I mean, it's limiting because you don't have the strikes, right? It's a grappling type of match. I thought they worked this fairly well. And I'm not trying to say that this was an all-time classic, but considering that this could have kind of been boring in the wrong hands, I don't think this ever got boring. They did work in and out of submissions well. They did the whole thing where Great-O-Khan got tossed over the top rope, or kind of maneuvered over the top rope by Uemura for his second rope break / ring exit. So he was in big jeopardy. Fans ended up chanting for Great-O-Khan, and when O-Khan fought out of the armbar, the crowd was really into it. He ended up hitting an eliminator with the claw to get the win and regain the King of Pro Wrestling Championship. So Great-O-Khan with the victory. I enjoyed this more than I thought I was going to.
I agree with you. I think the rural revitalization matches are a hit. Like, I think that they want to go back to it and go to all the small towns and do that kind of thing, and they're having a great time with it. I don't know what this means for Yuya. It's like you give him a title run with a lower title for about a month, and then he loses it to the guy who won it off. I feel like you've not really accomplished much of anything with that, and at this point, like, I think you just kind of have to turn him heel and might have to rehabilitate him, because he is the forgotten one of the 4,
I'm thinking about this a lot too with the King of Pro Wrestling title, and we talked about how a lot of times the personality of the person holding it comes out, and I think we may have missed the point a little bit of what story we're actually being told here. The King of Pro Wrestling title is a provisional title, which means you're not really the King of Pro Wrestling until the end of the year, right? You have to make it to the end of the year. I think the story they're telling us, Jeremy, long-term might be, can Great-O-Khan make it through the year? And so I thought, maybe this is how they're going to develop Yuya's personality. They're going to give him the KOPW title, and then he's going to come up with his stipulations that match his philosophy and all that. What I may have lost track of is that the year-long story is Great-O-Khan trying to work his way through this labyrinth of stipulations and defenses to get to the end of the year, and then whether he does or not. That might be what they're trying to talk to us about.
So you're saying that Yuya is the supporting character in this chapter of a year-long book?
Maybe so. Okay. Like that he was this challenger, and then they're going to get it. Like the whole thing is that O-Khan might drop it and then regain it again later on in the year. But
if that's
the struggle is going to be to make it to
right now. If that's what Yuya has to be right now, better to do it early in his career and use up that capital before, like, you don't want to be using him for that kind of stuff later on in his career. I don't like it in general being him, but if you're going to elevate O-Khan, you have to use a cost elsewhere, and I get it.
And Dunstan, we have some disagreement on this as to whether or not they like it or not. Dunstan said, I'm not going to lie, I couldn't get into this match. Maybe it was just fatigue. And Brad mentions that he's ready for the title to disappear. The match was fine. Seems Shingo's reign was the last one that really mattered.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Yeah, and Shingo did some really cool things with it too, which we have not quite. I mean, Great O'Khan weaving in eating contests, that's, you can decide whether you enjoy that stuff or not. It's not my favorite, certainly, but I like Great O'Khan, and I like his promos a lot, like his backstage comments. He's a thoughtful guy, and he has an interesting take on this, like the whole urban rural
revitalization match.
And it's and when you hear him talk about the business as a whole and what pro wrestling can mean to people, he's a thoughtful guy. He has an interesting concept of it. So I'm curious to see what he does, more than I'm sitting on the edge of my seat loving the wrestling. I'm just curious. He has my attention, I guess, is the point there. But yeah, this wasn't an all-time classic, but I did enjoy, considering the limitations of the rules, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
They have a lot of matches to make throughout the year, and I get what the King of Pro Wrestling exists, but sometimes a little can go a long way.
And Colin mentions, did you hear Chris and Walker take the Mickey out of Tony Khan during this match? I didn't catch that. Did you, Jeremy? What do you know what Colin's talking about?
I kind of tune out some of the Tony Khan talk at this point. It angers me, and I was like, this is not, I just need to watch a match.
Put it in the comments, Colin. What did you do? Yeah. Tell us what you heard. I'm curious if we did miss that.
I already have my own opinion of Tony Khan, and they're plus and minus right now. And once we get to the Forbidden Door talk after the co-main event, maybe we can get some clarity on exactly my complex feelings on this partner to New Japan Pro Wrestling.
All right, well, let's move on to the next match. The next one after this one was the never open weight 6-man title match. This was Hiroshi Tanahashi, Oleg Boltin, and Toru Yano defending against Hiromu Takahashi, Bushi, and Yota Tsuji. Now, an interesting little wrench thrown into all this is that Yota Tsuji doesn't give a crap about any of this, doesn't want to be there. And that was very clear from his body language walking in. The story is that Tsuji is not interested in tag team championships. He's strictly about personal glory there, and not interested in holding these titles or anything else except going after the big singles championships. So we didn't even get the big grin out of him at the beginning here. He just looked like he was forced to be there. And but there were a heavy Yota chants to start the match. The crowd just decided, well, we're going to get him into it if he doesn't want to be into it. Tsuji, of course, was Hiroshi Tanahashi's young lion. He was Tanahashi's attendant, and they were open about that at the time. You don't always know. Like for instance, I mean, do we know who Shomakado's main roster guy is? We really don't, but Yota Tsuji used to catch the air guitar, if you remember. Like, he would toss the air guitar to Tanahashi, and Tanahashi would toss it back in the day. They were more open about how those two were working together. And Chris supposed that some of his speech about how Hantai needs to be a destination for people coming back was directed at Tsuji, figuring that I thought this guy was going to be Hantai. He was my guy. And then I treated him well.
Such an interesting discourse that he was talking about.
It was. But everyone got some stuff in, but the Tsuji Tanahashi stuff had a little extra steam on it. Eventually, Tanahashi missed the high fly flow on Tsuji. Tsuji then hit the Gene Blast on the guy that broke him in. And of all the people in this match, Bushi's in this match, Toru Yano's in this match, there's a guy who's ostensibly barely not a young lion anymore. Hiroshi Tanahashi does the job right here and gets pinned by Yota Tsuji, and we have new trios champs.
So there was a tease earlier where, Yota Tsuji was going to hit the Gene Blast, but Toru Yano grabbed his foot and stopped him from doing it. And so you're like, okay, well, that finish might not happen. And then he actually hit the Gene Blast on Hiroshi Tanahashi. And yes, okay, right? This is Hiroshi Tanahashi in 2024. He is not the guy from 2018 who last won the IWGP title against Kenny Omega, or any iteration of that. He is physically not what he once was. But when Yota Tsuji hit that spear on him and he got the 1, 2, 3, there was definitely a lean forward in the chair and a kind of like, holy shit moment. Because it just felt like a big deal. Like Yota Tsuji and Bushi and Hiromu celebrating with the belts in the middle of the ring. And then, we had the little post-match angle, which also had me very interested. And I'll let you get into that. But the whole thing just went from something quiet and didn't really feel like anything that had been built up substantially coming into the match to something that felt like had stakes by the time it was over.
This could be another one that we see in the G1, by the way. So you could get Tanahashi and Tsuji again, but maybe the other thing we might get is Tsuji and Oleg Boltin at some point, because Boltin wouldn't let it go. He kept coming in there, and we haven't seen this side of Oleg. We haven't seen this. And they're starting to work some personality into him. You notice that they're starting to work with his facial expressions. He's supposed to be a little bit more emotive, especially when doing the big swing. Now he's starting to yell and throw the guy instead of just being stoic. Now he goes after Tsuji. He kind of wants a handshake, but also wants to get in his face. Tsuji blows him off. Get out of here, kid. Which is funny because I think Oleg's older than him. But the whole thing was Tsuji very dismissive. But Oleg, got in his face, then left the ring, went back into the ring and shoved him.
Wouldn't let it go.
Wouldn't let it go. And Brad's into it. He said, give me best of 7 here. And Dunstan's into it too. He just says, Bolton, it could be a Wrestle Kingdom main event someday. Maybe so. And
Steven Conway, you have to have thought about me when you saw this. You have to have thought about me and everything that I'm saying about turn Bolton Oleg heel, make him part of Bullet Club, and make him the Bullet. Oh my God. I was watching it and I was like, they're teasing it. They're teasing it. They are teasing the Bullet and Bolton Oleg. I don't know where this is going, but when you're teasing getting more people on Hontai, that's a surefire formula for somebody possibly leaving.
Dunstan mentions, I think Oleg could benefit from learning under a Claudio just for a mini excursion. That would be a good guy for him to learn from.
I don't think they want to share him with anybody. I think they want to keep him. I think they want to keep him as far away from everyone else as much as possible.
I absolutely agree with you. I also think they ought to be giving him every video of Claudio they can find to watch, and among other people, Claudio is definitely one that they should be giving him.
I would like to see him carry himself a little bit like Batista. Where he's just like big, hulking, and just kind of, he has Batista energy about him. And it's not that he's big and scary. It's just the way that he carries himself. Like, he's low key cool, and I don't think he realizes it.
Well, there you go. And they and Colin has given us an update here. He said they were just teasing him about making huge announcements every week, and it was just before the G1 announcement.
Tony Khan had another major announcement.
Mimicked him in a squeaky voice. Yeah. What was the one that they had on Power Bombshells? The graphic that Mel brought up. I don't think she made it.
Tony Khan had a major announcement.
Tony Khan makes a huge sandwich tomorrow on Dynamite. It's like everything. All the announcements are huge. Doggone it. But
here's an interesting thing.
Yeah, Chris Sampson brought up a storyline that every time Bushi held the 6-man titles, his partners have gone on to win the world titles. Shingo, Sonata, and Evil. Could this be the future with Tsuji? Yep. I mean, I think he's going to eventually hold that thing.
I think Yota Tsuji is definitely going to be winning the world title. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, especially if he just stays healthy. That's all he's got to do.
Yeah. All right, so that was fun, but that was a fun one. And then we moved on to the television title. This one was as can't miss as a match gets. Jeff Cobb defending against Tomohiro Ishii, and as far as I'm concerned, this was exactly what we hoped it would be. Big moves, guys bowling up on each other, kicking out at one, powering each other around, doing impressive things to one another, suplexing each other, again, suplexes, and then the I clothesline you, you clothesline me, the shoulder block stuff. It was an Ishii match. He's the best at it. Cobb is absolutely a wonderful opponent for him and stuff like this because he can do things that are just as impressive, maybe more so. The crowd loved it. It's a perfect use of Tomohiro Ishii to have a match like this. He's at his age with all the money, he's not going to be the world heavyweight champion, although he's a sentimental favorite for people like me that we love to see a run, but it doesn't make any business sense. But this is how you use Ishii. Ishii got out of a power bomb with a Hurricane Rana. Can you believe that one, Jeremy? He does the Hurricane Rana at him. Then he lariated him, and when he hit the lariat, Jeff Cobb did the full backflip bump for him right there. So these guys were selling each other like crazy. It was a lot of fun. In the end, Cobb did manage to get him in the Tour of the Islands, got the victory, and just fantastic. Just had a blast.
So there's a thing with these Jeff Cobb TV title matches. I don't like to take notes. I don't like to think about it. I just like to sit down for the 15 minutes and enjoy my life, because these matches are so much fun. You're just watching them, and you're just watching. When you're a kid and you think about two big guys wrestling each other in pro wrestling, right? And you're like, what is pro wrestling? You're trying to describe it to somebody else. This is what you're describing. You're describing a Jeff Cobb and Tomohiro Ishii match. What two kids will see are superheroes of human beings. Behemoths, titans, just beating each other to see which one is better.
Yeah.
And this is what we're getting from Jeff Cobb for the last couple months, and presumably until, his body can't keep doing this. But I am just thoroughly enjoying it. And I have an update for you. I've gone to the New Japan Pro Wrestling TV title YouTube. It is not uploaded onto the YouTube page, but the Lance Archer match was uploaded 3 weeks ago. So we shall be getting it very, very, very soon.
And then Brad mentions, well, let's read some of these comments. Colin said that it was his match of the night. Dunson said probably match of the night. Main event was great, but this one delivered as well. Brad says, pop up Frankensteiner. That's all. Spot of the century, he's calling it. Watch the match for that move alone. The rest was outstanding. Yeah, it really was. When he hit that, everyone was like, what in the world is that? Like, how is Ishii doing that one? A lot of fun, boy. Again, just perfect use of these two guys. So thumbs up all the way.
This was, Colin said, his match of the night. Probably... It's not my match of the night because I have some emotional connection to the whole Desperado thing. But on many other nights, this could not be touched.
So there was a little bit of tension for me here, Jeremy, because in the past, we have had these moments when they've done big videos. And they said, we're going to make a huge sandwich next, right? So this is all coming up. We're going to do this whole video, and it's going to... In the past, they have run these videos, and whoever is the yahoo that is doing that is cutting up the matches into the segments for NJPW World has sometimes edited out the videos. You moron! So, but instead, so I was really sweating. He says, everything you know about the G1 Climax tournament changes tonight. And I just was, and there's a little ticker on the bottom of the screen counting down 5, 4, 3, 2. And I was on the edge of my seat. It's a little circle spun for just a second to see if they were going to cut this thing out, but they did not. And they let Chris translate for us. We got our G1 announcement. And
I took copious notes to do a quick, 60-second blurb. I was ready for this.
So this is the first, most important, maybe, in the end of it, is that we're back to 2 blocks of 10. 20 guys, not 32. 2 blocks of 10, the classic G1 that we kind of grew to love. And it's my favorite format thus far that they've done. With the added twist that 18 of those participants will be announced. And then there's one spot, the last spot, quote unquote, in each block will be decided by a qualifying tournament. Now, this I like. I like the idea that you can play into this thing. And so the qualifying tournament begins June 22nd with the finals on July 5th. That will determine the final entrant in each block. And the opening matches will be on July 20 and 21st in Osaka. Every match on the cards will be a league match. And the added thing is the top 3 point scorers from each block move on. If you finish first, you are rewarded with a bye. I like that. That's a real good incentive for finishing first in a kayfabe way, and and makes logical sense. And then 2 and 3 will wrestle each other for the pleasure of getting into the semifinals. What did you think when you saw this new format?
I was really excited because it made the New Japan Soul Tour feel a little bit more important. It also made the getting into the bracket, the value of actually being a valued member of the roster and getting the bracket without the play-in tournament. That's going to be very interesting. Like, what's the cutoff, right? Like, what guy from each faction? Like guys like Shingo and Hinare. Like, Hinare may not be at this point. Like, you have to think about what is exactly the cutoff of who would make it. I wanted to make a list before we got out here, and we'll probably do this on Thursday, is talk about who are the automatic 15, right?
Yeah.
Who's the 18 that are the lock? And then who gets put into, the play-in? Does Yujiro get put in the play-in kind of thing instead of, does Honma get a shot at the play-in? The tournament this year? That kind of thing. So I think it's interesting. I think we're going to keep it very pure New Japan. It seems like there's not a whole lot of room for extra people. And I think a back to basics approach is a lot better. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's cool. I like it too. There are interesting things you could do. For instance, and I'm just kicking around ideas. I have no inside information on this, but Henare, right, missed a big chunk of the year. So kayfabe, does Henare have the 2024 credentials to get into the G1?
Sure.
He might have to fight his way in. And then you can tell that story of this guy who should be there, but doesn't have the automatic bid, fighting to get that, to scratch his way into that last spot. There's a lot of drama you could do with that. Yes, and you know, somebody coming back from an injury, somebody coming back from an excursion, you know, and again, there are just ideas there that can be played with, of somebody almost getting there but not quite, maybe someone you figure will get there but doesn't, and there's a bit of a surprise. So you can really toy with that without putting somebody in 9 block matches. You know, you can play with that in the play-in tournament then, and I think that's a clever way of telling more stories regarding the G1, because once you're in the block, then it all has to do with mathematics as much as anything else. You can get some emotion in the play-in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see once we have the block, we'll be able to kind of set out what the plans are for the year. I'm going to recap this one more time for everybody just to lay it out with the G1, plan is. So the G1 Climax 34 is going to have 18 entrants guaranteed. The A block will have 1 through 9, and the B block will have 1 through 9. Next week at Sapporo, they will announce who those are. On the 22nd of June, New Japan will have a tournament in which qualifiers will be held going through July 5th. Starting on July 20th is the G1, 30 minutes each match, one fall to a finish. The top 3 point getters in each block will get advancement. The first place gets bye. The second place of the A block and the third place of B will face each other. And the second place of B and the third place of A will face each other off on August 15th. On August 17th, the A1 will face the winner of the A2 versus B3, and the B1 will face the winner of the B2 versus A3. And then on the 8/18, we will get the finals of the G1. I'm going to save that Sabre Jr.
You're so okay. You're going with your prediction on Zach there. Let's get some comments on this, because it seems to have been a popular format here. And Dunstan also has an interesting question, by the way, because Jeff Cobb did lay out an open invitation to take on anyone at Forbidden Door for the TV title. And Dunstan already has, I hope Samoan Joseph picks up the phone. Yeah, boy, don't we ever. Please. I don't ask much. I ask this. And then Colin said, I wish they'd announce who's in it before altogether, since not everyone will get to see that show. Yeah. You know, or I'm not sure when they'll announce the names, but, and then Dunstan says, thank you, God, for returning to the 20-man block. Brad has a good thought here. I like this new format. It makes winning your block mean more. You get to skip an entire tough match if you win your block. So that's the incentive there. Opens up for more surprises with the added number 3 spot for the final. I agree. I think this has a lot of possibilities for drama. And Dunstan said, do they say how many qualifiers? They didn't. They didn't say exactly how many people were in that playoff tournament. That's a fair point.
I think they said that there was something like 12 or there's like 28 people were involved in the tournament, right? And so 18 were guaranteed, and I think there's like 10 that are playing in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. I feel like I heard it at some point. The math was a little weird, but I feel like they gave an indication that there was like only going to be a few tournament matches. Like it wasn't going to be a lot of people in this, because there isn't a whole lot of people at the back end of it. They still had to fill 28 people last year with a ton of people that weren't in New Japan.
Yeah. We'll have to see how that turns out. But yeah, I don't think they said specifically how many, but should be interesting. They also gave us a couple more dates for the end of the year. We'll have big shows coming up. Let's see, September 29th in Kobe World Hall, back in Sumo Hall, October 14th. I'd imagine some of that will be Destruction Tour, for instance. November 4th, back in Osaka. Historic Crossover 2. We know when that's
November
coming.
For sure, huh?
November 17th. Yeah, November 17th for Historic Crossover number 2.
Nice.
December 8th, there'll be a big show. And then, of course, a one-night Wrestle Kingdom in the Dome on January 4th. So they are not going back to the 2-night format, which I think is fine. Let's have one big card. Let's get that crowd up where it needs to be. And then we can talk about 2 nights when you're selling a whole ton of tickets. This one, by the way, just about around 7,300 people. We said last Thursday that if they got to 75, they would be considered a success. 8,000 would be a raging success. Didn't quite get there, but last year, they did just barely over 7,000, this time 7,300. So up a couple hundred, not bad. And Colin says, well, all the G1 shows have English commentary. I am under the impression, yes. From what they said today. They didn't specifically say those words, but all indications were that Walker will be over there for the G1 tournament. Did you get that impression too?
I am of the belief that Walker will in fact be in Japan for the G1. He will probably be in San Jose for the CMLL show, but in Japan before for the Seoul shows, back for that, and then back in Japan for the G1 starting in July, the week after.
What should New Japan do to avoid in the next 6 months until wrestling? What should they avoid for the next 6 months until Kingdom? I mean,
booking.
Yeah, I mean, not to be a smartass, but yeah, let's just get back to the logical stuff that we kind of came to love New Japan for, and not some of the randomness that we saw in the first half of the year. I think they know who's in and who's out now, which wasn't true at the beginning of the year, because I think Tama Tonga caught him off guard. We saw a little bit, and we're about to get to it, in that tag team match where things might be headed for some of the guys there. But I think they have an idea, whereas I think they got blindsided by a few things, and it took them a few months to get back to where they wanted. We're seeing some course corrections now. And I think people are back on track where they wanted to go in the first place, and maybe things got thrown around a little bit. But
I would also argue that maybe they were not prepared for the reaction to Sonata to not be as strong as it was.
I think they ran into a surprise there. Yeah, I think that was a big disappointment for them as well. And then, you had the Tama Tonga thing, which they weren't looking out for. And then I think they were still hoping against hope that they could hold on to Ospreay, and they didn't. So I think there were a lot of things at the beginning of the year that they were just like, well, this isn't what we had in mind. Whereas I think the second half of this year, figure out who you got, go with it, and stick with it. And I think they have a better idea now, because this show had direction to it, which is what I asked for. It's direction.
Yes. And a little bit of urgency.
Yeah. All right. So let's take a look at the next one, which was the reuniting of the World Tag Team and NJPW Strong Tag Team titles. Now, this kind of contradicts one of Tanahashi's 10 points, but that point about making the titles mean more and putting the strong titles back in the United States came with the caveat that would take about 12 to maybe 18 months to accomplish, because they knew this story was being told. It's a little puzzling why they keep putting these titles together and then tearing them apart. But nevertheless, I think we're going to move away from it. We had a tornado elimination match here between current champions, the IWGP champions, which were Kenta and Chase Owens, the strong champions, ELP and Hikuleo, Bishamon, YOSHI-HASHI and Hirooki Goto, and TMDK, Mikey, Nicholls, and Shane Haste. They got rid of a lot of drama by dumping Chase and Kenta out of this thing real early. They hit the Shoto and they were gone. And first to go actually was a tank buster on Hikuleo. And that was after El Phantasmo accidentally gave him the super kick, right? And knocked him out enough that he took a tank buster. And the first team out were the strong tag team champions, ELP and Hikuleo. Hikuleo was angry at ELP afterwards. Jado was kind of playing peacemaker, but he left with Hikuleo. And this might be the beginning of either a turn, Hikuleo's exit story, because I kind of expect Hikuleo to be in Survivor Series this year. And, we're just looking at a situation here where I think they have started to move toward the idea of not having this tag team going forward. So that's what that felt like to me. Did you agree with that one, Jeremy?
If you're going to do this angle, right? Brad in the Discord, when we were talking about, felt the same as you, like that he might not be long for New Japan. But at the same time, when else could you run an angle in which you are unsure about Hikuleo's loyalty of sticking around in New Japan or not, other than right now when his brothers are wildly successful in another promotion? Like there are things about this that you can play with to subvert the audience expectation. And I am yet to be convinced that that's not actually happening here. But if Hikuleo, not going to be around for much longer, it's a good way to do it. And a bummer, but I get it. He is incredibly talented.
I just keep going. I keep fantasy booking in my head the Usos back with a babyface Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu against the Gorillas of Destiny and Solo Sikoa, basically at Survivor Series. It's just screaming at me. I just can't. I can't turn it off. I can't unhear it. I think that's my guess as to where it's headed. Either way, the two championship teams were out fairly quickly in this thing, which left the two best teams in the match. So we had TMDK against Bishamon for the end, and that was pretty darn good. Like once that got going, that was fun to watch. And the sentimental favorites were TMDK in this. They have banged the drum about TMDK being the best team to never hold the IWGP World Tag Team titles.
They said it so many times during the commentary.
They did. They must have been doing so on Japanese commentary too, because that crowd in Osaka was right there with it when it happened. And in the end, that's what we got. We got the thing. They hit all the big moves going down the stretch, and including that combination of the power bomb and the rock bottom. The power bottom. Can we say that? And then they also had I like this one, that thing where Shane Haste pops up on Mikey Nicholls' shoulders and does where it looks like a power bomb. Instead of power bombing his own partner, they go to the corner and he hits a superplex. That's the Olivia Newton bomb. So another Australian reference.
An amazing pun, by the way.
That's really good. And
I am a pun connoisseur, and that is fantastic.
Super Tank Buster got the finish though. TMDK finally the IWGP champions and strong champions. The tag team division is struggling. There's no getting around this, and we'll get to your comments about that because you're right. You're right. But if you have Bishamon, you have TMDK, there is a foundation there on which you can build. It's going to take a lot of work because there aren't a lot of good heavyweight tag teams in New Japan right now. But with these two teams, the last few minutes of that match with these two against each other shows there is good talent in that division. Two of the better teams in the world. They just need depth.
Yes. I think both this and the junior heavyweight division was a good indication that these two divisions, they can't keep going back to the well with the old favorites. They need to build new stars. And this is what they ended up doing. I thought it was a no-brainer after the fact when you think that Forbidden Door is there, and Zack Sabre Jr. just got announced to be facing Orange Cassidy over in Forbidden Door in New York. So that's going to be a heck of a match. Why wouldn't TMDK have a tag title match against an AEW team over there? They may not have a very long run, and they might end up dropping the titles to somebody over in AEW that might want to run. I was talking to you privately that, there might potentially be smoke to the fire of like the Lucha Brothers, Penta and Phoenix, facing off against TMDK and then them having a run in New Japan some point in the future. That could possibly happen.
And like I said to you, I said Penta Cerro Miedo is really, really good. Penta is very, very good. And Phoenix is Penta's tag team partner. So it would be interesting. Phoenix is very busy in his matches. He does a lot of things, and only half of them look good, and only about a third of them make a lick of sense. But he's very busy. He does a lot of things. Penta's a little bit more of an actual worker in that sense that he tries to put a match together. But that can be, maybe some of the guys in New Japan could do something with that. But it would be intriguing. The other thing I said to you, though, is new blood at this point, even if it's not the best thing in the world or whoever, and I'm not even talking about Phoenix and Penta, but new blood at this point, please. I mean, that's what this division needs so badly. It's just some sort of variety. My goodness.
They have shown no fear in taking the belt off of a team like ELP and Hikuleo immediately after they won them at Wrestle Kingdom. What's to say that they aren't equally as open to doing the same thing to TMDK in the first pay-per-view after Dominion when they win their big title match at the big show? It's like that's all kind of in the back of my mind. And, you can do the sustained build through the World Tag League. So they have to have until then to regain the titles at Wrestle Kingdom. Have the big match, then you have the journey. But if you build the titles around or build the division around them chasing the titles again, even though you have a depleted tag division in New Japan, there might be a tag team in AEW that is currently not busy that might work out given current arrangements.
Grizzled young veterans, please. That's what I would like. I would like.
Oh, hey, Brad! Look at Brad, just like this.
Yeah, Tony Khan should be a good partner to send over his tag teams that aren't being used right now. Dunstan has some thoughts too. He says, like I said before, they don't have exciting teams or stories with the division being stale, and you can't really argue with that. But Brad, this match showed how dreadful the tag division is. But Bishamon and TMDK had a great closing stretch. Yeah.
the whole point of this entire tag division in the first half of 2024 was a hot potato to show that all of these teams were essentially on equal footing with each other. At any given point, one of these teams had the titles over one of the other. So by the time you got here, we had to settle it all and be like, okay, one of these teams has taken all of these titles, and we're calling it a day. TMDK ended up the one doing so after having the strong titles for a cup of coffee. Everything is great. I love it. Let's rebuild the tag division and keep these 4 teams away from each other.
And he mentions one other thing too. Dunstan does. He said we run into the problem where they don't have any exciting teams, and TMDK will eventually have to lose the strong belts while remaining IWGP tag champions, which is always awkward. It just is. It's an awkward situation. You could do the thing where someone takes the strong titles off of them in the United States, which they say they want to do, and keep the belts over here, like West Coast Wrecking Crew, whoever, and then have the thing with, okay, now that we've won these, we want a shot at the IWGP title, and then have TMDK win that, and now the belts are separated. But it's still awkward. You can do it, but it's always awkward whenever they do it. And Brad mentioned this too. I'm not sure what it is, but this version of El Phantasmo has done nothing for me. He's still very good in the ring, but something's off. I don't know if he's missing that killer instinct, but it's something. So El Phantasmo, maybe he just needs, he had the feud with Finlay kind of right there, but maybe he just needs a Hikuleo feud. If he turns on him, would be good for him. We need El Phantasmo pissed off again instead of friendly handshaking ELP. Maybe just see babyface edge to him, and I don't mean that in Adam Copeland's sense. Please no, but El Phantasmo with a bit of anger to him. Maybe that's what's missing.
A little bit of sass.
Yeah, I don't know. He had that. When he turned babyface, he lost that smart aleckness that he had.
He needs to be more Copeland, not Christian.
Does he need to be either one of those two?
No, but I'm saying if you're going to be energy, you need to be more of like, I don't know. He has the formula to be a top babyface. He has all of it there. But for whatever reason, I'm the Joker in the back of the class kind of thing is prevalent in his identity. And I don't know if that can be shaken enough where he can stand front and tall in front of the stage, which I think he should.
Brad also mentions Gates of Agony for an extended NJPW run. I'd be happy to see them back. I thought they did a good job when they were here too. So their teams, I mean, God knows there are plenty of people hanging around catering at AEW that could go over and work here, and talented ones. And so just fresh blood. That's all we could have. Dunstan says they could do a story with ELP being alone again and build a new face group. He and Shota could be a team. He's talented enough that you can certainly do something with the guy. I don't disagree that he's kind of meandering right now because he's the odd man out in the GOD group, really, and it's just
if Hikuleo leaves, there is no GOD. That's it. It's like ELP is going to be a part of Hontai until he decides that this is not the way for him or whatever. It's like there's only a few ways that it can go with him because the story is happening around him and it is affecting him rather than the story being about him.
There you go. All right. That's a good way of putting it. I like that, actually. So, all right. Well, we'll see where it goes with ELP in the future. I'm confident he's going to be one of the people in the G1 somewhere, or at least involved in the plan. So, more story to be told there. After that, though, we did get, if Ishii and Cobb wasn't match of the night, we had Hanare versus Shingo Takagi for the never Openweight title after this. I'm so happy to see Hanare back in there after what happened to him in that cage. Another match that was just what we hoped for. These were just two guys working a stiff, hard-hitting match with one another. Two very, very tough men telling the story that they had to pull out every stop in the world to take each other down. And in the end, that's exactly what they did. Both of them hit their big moves. So Hanare hit the Streets of Rage. Shingo even hit Last of the Dragon, but they played it up that they were too beaten up to even cover one another after hitting their big move. There were a long series that exchanged headbutts, clotheslines, forearms until they finally both collapsed in battered and bruised heaps, and they got the double knockout finish. Second one for Hanare after the Gabe Kidd match there. But they also told the story that Hanare was the first one up. and was the one that was walking around trying to get them to restart the match, but Shingo was out cold. So in the end, Hinari did not win the title. It was a knockout, so I guess is a draw as
inconclusive.
So one, we can do it again sometime. Number two, it's just another chapter in the story of Hinari just being too tough for his own good and too tough for his opponent's good. In that he will die on that hill. He will go down with the ship, however you want to put it. But you have to really destroy the guy in order to keep him down. It's good for his character. I like the match. I don't mind that Shingo is still the champion, certainly, because who's going to complain about major title matches with Shingo Takagi? What did you think of this?
I get what they were trying to go for, that these two were just two tough sons of bitches that would kill each other given the chance. That's basically the story that you're getting. But I pretty much have given up on the idea that Shingo needs to be holding any belt other than the IWGP title. Him holding the never Openweight title he is beyond it at this point. And so every moment that we just no, I think he's above it. I don't think Shingo needs to be holding that title anymore. I think that there are other people on the roster that are better served to be holding that title and to be telling stories around. Whereas Shingo, given the lack of main event presence in New Japan, he should be strictly main event talent.
It's tricky though, because you got Naito in that main event spot. He's in the same.
I hear you, but in my mind, like you have Naito is a tier 1, Shingo is tier 2, and then there's a bunch of people on tier 3 and tier 4. So yes, he has the never title, and it is a secondary title to the world title. But Naito should be in the conversation for the world title instead of holding a secondary title. It sounds weird, but I feel like the entirety of New Japan is being held up by the comfort of having him and some other people holding these titles rather than vying for the IWGP.
Yeah, I think it's probably more of a faction thing for me because you can't really have him there with Naito as a champ. But the key to this for me, the never Openweight title is sort of back to being the BMF belt again. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I think he's perfect for it. I think that's exactly what, either as the champion or somebody challenging for it, that I think that's the perfect kind of a slot for him to have these kind of matches. But
I get it, but we already know he's the baddest motherfucker. Like he doesn't need the belt to do that. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if Naito is either the champion or competing for it, what does Shingo do?
I don't know, but like
yeah,
this is comfortable.
The answer's this.
This is comfortable. This is a comfortable thing that you are doing in this promotion by having Shingo with this never title, instead of coming up with scenarios in which you are pitting your top stars against each other in ways that are compelling for your audience. This is comfortable. This is not taking a chance and putting your top stars in the top roles.
Well, let's take a look at some of the comments about this one, because the finish was surprising to me. I didn't think they were going to do a double knockout, but Brad said they don't miss against each other. There will be another match that Hinari has to win, and that moment's going to be tremendous. And then let's see, Dunstan thought that the finish was. He said this match was going to that second gear, but the finish felt anticlimactic to him. Flaming Shark mentions that this is what I thought. By the way, this Flaming Sharks thing is what I kind of got. I didn't mind the finish. But I feel like you would do that finish at a smaller show to set up the conclusive one at Dominion, right? When you do like Dominion, either the second biggest show of the year, again, depending on how you rank the G1 finals, but one of the biggest shows of the year, certainly, this feels like something you would do at a different show to set up the Dominion match, but instead they went that way with it. And Dunstan said we could see Bad Dude Tito challenge. I'd love to see Tito challenge for that title. Yeah, why not? Tito versus Cobb for the TV title doesn't break my heart either, by the way. But I'm a big Tito guy. And Brad mentions it's interesting how different fans are. Last night on Collision, there was a time limit draw and fans booed because they wanted a winner. This match was a draw and the fans applauded and didn't mind it. Yeah, it's I don't know what the draw was on Collision. I didn't get to see Collision.
It was FTR versus Claudio in Utah. They gave a 1-minute warning on a 20-minute match. And FTR wanted to continue the match, but the Young Bucks sent Brandon Cutler out to say that according to the contract, this match is 20 minutes, blah, blah, blah. You are not going to do it. And then they killed Brandon Cutler, and then they said, we're going to do this again someday.
Well, I mean, if there's anything fans love, it's a heel authority figure. If there's one thing we've learned from the past 20 years of pro wrestling, fans love a heel authority figure. It's never been done, Jeremy. No one's ever done it until Huey and Dewey Jackson did. It's a whole new concept that Huey and Dewey are doing. And the fans love
on a Sunday today. You are sassy today.
They're showing up by and they are buying tickets to Collision by the dozens. The dozens, Jeremy.
I get what Brad is saying. I did not love this finish, but I understood that, like Henare is just back. Like maybe if Henare had a couple more matches under his belt, he wouldn't have been incapacitated. He would have been able to make it to the thing and outlast Shingo. Like we talk about that kind of health and storytelling in matches before. I am totally okay with them running this back as long as they stop running it back after that. You remember my C block joke. We are still in the C block of the G1 2023 right now.
Nothing Jeremy hates more than a series of really good matches by Crikey. You better knock that crap off.
I love it, but okay, we have gone back to the well on Henare and Shingo and Tama Tonga and Finley. It has been the same thing for a year. And I feel like I'm the only one that remembers this and gets a little bit frustrated that you are not switching it up and there isn't more of a presence for Game Kib in like this division or other people. Just I get exasperated by it sometimes. And sometimes I can get a little sassy about it.
Flaming Shark mentions this is another interesting point. Henare wins this in most promotions, but this is pretty much how New Japan does things. Henare should definitely win the next time through, though. This is an interesting point because New Japan has a long history of people losing their match coming back off of a big injury. That's a thing that they do. Even Antonio Inoki at one point lost a match after he had been out with an injury in the 80s when he hardly ever lost. Right. And Inoki came back after an injury and they said, well, it's just not realistic for somebody to just go right back into it and win against a top guy. They did. Hiromu, when he came back from his broken neck, lost his first few before he got that final win. They like to kind of tease the idea of, well, he's back, but he's got a little bit of rust. It's going to take a while to get back to it. So Henare, now he has wrestled before. Of course, he wrestled on the Road 2 shows coming up to this. So it's not apples to apples in that sense, but maybe in New Japan logic, they sat there and they thought, is it logical for a guy to just come up and beat Shingo Takagi after almost dying in the ring because his artery was severed? Maybe a double knockout. We don't bury him, but maybe not a victory. And that could have gone into it too, because that is part of the New Japan history of booking guys coming back.
100% the New Japan way. Yes, let's be clear. This was a good match. I enjoyed these two beating the hell out of each other. I just, I want to see these two guys beat the hell out of two other guys.
Well, Dunstan agrees with you. He says a lot of repetitive matches, not enough fresh ones. All right. Well, that's fair. We can agree to disagree on that. Now, up next, we have the IWGP World Heavyweight title. And I think we can all agree that we don't need to see this one too many more times. We all agree we don't want to see this too much, right? So go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
If I told you this was exactly what I thought it was going to be,
yeah,
would you be surprised?
No, I when I was watching this, I just thought this is pretty much paint by numbers as to what this match is going to turn out into. But this was the Lumberjack death match, so Moxley against Evil. The only real surprise in this one was House of Torture grabbed Kadani at ringside, the guy in charge of the whole thing, and spray painted him Evil, spray painted the big cheese black there, and they carted him off. But this was exactly what you thought. The House of Torture was there to help out Evil. Moxley was joined by the third generation guys, along with Shota Umino. So Nagata was down there, Tenzan was down there, Tiger Mask was down there with Umino. And there were clashes outside the ring. Thankfully, not an enormous number of them. There were some, but they did an okay job of keeping the focus on Mox and Evil in there. But there was still some plenty of frivolity. They used belts on each other. They used powder. There were tables. There were chairs. Evil came up with a neat little thing to use the moves of the third generation guys on Moxley while they had to stand by and watch. So he did the Nagata lock. Moxley used the Nagata lock also, by the way. But the Nagata lock 2, pardon me. Evil used Nagata lock. Moxley used Nagata lock 2. He also used Tenzan submission. In the end, though, some neat spots there where House of Torture interfered. Third generation guys came in and nullified them just like we thought that they would. At one point, they all had submissions on, except for Tiger Mask, who at his age, Tiger Mask, tope suicida, Jeremy.
That was fantastic.
Feeling his Wheaties, wasn't he? Got a pop out of it, too.
I was like, oh, you're going for it.
Yeah, the crowd enjoyed that.
I appreciate they didn't camera cut 5 times during it.
Right. Mox hit with the Death Rider. Show ended up using the push-up bar. Mox went through a table. Then he made the comeback and got his barbed wire bat and hit Evil a few times after a struggle with it, and ran off the House of Torture. Death Rider on the bat to win. It got a good pop. And in the end, he managed to fend off the House of Torture. No great revelations about anybody turning on Evil at this point or House of Torture being dissolved and everything, but they were vanquished. This did feel like their run with about the IWGP titles over for now.
The chapter of House of Torture running roughshod did feel like, with Generation 3 there and everything going on, that they're like, okay, we're putting a pin on this. Everything's good. And watch Evil is a perennial threat in the G1, and we're right back to it. It's totally fine. Everything's fine, everybody. But no, this was a kitchen sink match. If you are going to hear a bunch of reviews other than ours, you are going to hear words like it was excessive. It was every House of Torture match you've ever seen. They threw every single tool that they do, always. Moxley looked at the wrench and threw away all the tools at one point. It was like, I don't need these things. It was like, it was a House of Torture match. It was Moxley overcoming the House of Torture. If you want to see the good guy defeating all the bad guys in a fun, compact 25-minute match, this is it for you. It is very much a Western American match for New Japan, but you will still enjoy it as a New Japan match, and that's the best way.
Flaming Shark mentions that Moxley versus Evil was fine because it wasn't the main event. Yeah, and we knew that if this had been the last match on the show, it'd been like, but we knew we were getting something good after that. But just as a title match, it was fine enough, I guess. Flaming Shark says, hopefully something of note happens with House of Torture. Pretty sure something's coming with them. Plus, I mean, what do they got to do something with them, right, Jeremy? I mean, they really have nowhere to go at the moment, right?
You can't do anything until after you settle the issue that was raised after the main event tonight.
Yeah.
But once you have that, you can begin, if you really want to dismantle the faction. But we're talking about this when Okada and Ospreay and Tama Tonga left. Just blow it all the fuck up and recreate some of these factions and start from scratch in a lot of ways. You know, it's like we have all these completely decimated factions other than Bullet Club, LIJ, and House of Torture. And House of Torture is getting demanded, getting taken apart and de-emphasized constantly. So you're going to have LIJ, well, TMDK as well. And, you know, it's like... It's not enough to sustain a promotion that is built on a foundation of stable warfare.
Yeah, and some other thoughts that people had. Brad mentioned that House of Torture did exactly what they needed to for heat. Moxley overcame it. There was still another great match left, so really no complaints on that end. And Shark said it was a match for the Japanese fans, and I think so too. That clearly the Japanese fans were into the whole idea of Nagata, Tenzan, and Tiger Mask coming into this story and being a part of countering House of Torture being so disrespectful to the tradition of the company and all that. That worked for the people there. That absolutely worked for those live audiences. So Dunson says it was a match, just not an IWGP title match. But with all the fan service, it worked well enough, according to Shark. Yeah, I thought so. It was fine. And the fact that it wasn't the main event did help. Because we knew we were going to get a traditional, really great New Japan match last. And that did help with the palate cleansing.
Hey, do you mind if we do the live read before we do that last match?
Let's hear it.
All right, man. Hey, everybody. We are members of the Fight Game Media Network. You can find a selection of our shows on all audio podcast catchers with shows that include The Wrap, The Dynamite Show, The 5-Star Joshi Show, Popcorn and Pile Drivers, which just reviewed No Holds Barred. Garrett Gonzalez and John O'Rourke did that one. Various newsworthy pay-per-view recaps for WWE, AEW, and New Japan is provided by yours truly on Speaking of Strong Style, right now reviewing Dominion. please like and give us 5 stars to increase our presence in audio. We also have this YouTube channel that sees more and more for the feedback you provide. So if you like what we do here live on Strong Style every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, Power Bombshell Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, the Dynamite Show 20 minutes after every AEW Dynamite, 5-star Joshi Show content on Thursdays and or Fridays, and live presentations of PLE and pay-per-view recaps. You can subscribe if you're listening for the first time, or just hit that like button for the show to pop up again until you're sure we're the team for you. Thank you for every minute you spent with us. We hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed the time with you. Steven, let's get back to the main event and talk about some Desperado.
Let's do that. And I also want to say a very quick thanks to Sam and Mel for plugging our show too. They've been
Thank
good
you
to
so
us
much,
on
you
that.
too.
They were a big help to us. So much obliged. They are here every Sunday at 1:00 Eastern, and you should listen. That was our semi-main event, and we were ready to move on to the main event after that.
The best course.
The best of the Super Juniors finals. This was Taiji Ishimori versus El Desperado. Oh, shoot. We should have mentioned, by the way, Tetsuya Naito did come out. John Moxley laid down the challenge. Maybe let's not jump too far ahead. This makes sense to do now.
Look, not bury the lead here.
Well, no, we could have done it last. Well, let's do that first. So Moxley got on the microphone and just said, "I don't care who's back there, who's next." You know, this whole thing if he'll fight anybody anytime. Naito comes out and says that since nobody else is going to come out, I'll come out, and I want another shot, and I want it at Forbidden Door. Is when he wants
not
it
New
all.
Japan Soul.
Not New Japan Soul, which is we had talked ourselves into thinking it was going to be New Japan Soul, but it's going to be.
I had talked myself and talked you into New Japan Soul. I will own that one.
At Forbidden Door. So that's when that one's going to be. So there you have it. Naito versus Moxley again in New York.
I've been thinking about this for a couple hours today, and there's one part of me that is incredibly frustrated that the Japanese audience is not getting a title change for Naito in Japan in his hometown. That bugs me. But at the same time, if Moxley is going to drop the title on an AEW pay-per-view to Naito, that cements Naito to a number of people watching that may not be particularly familiar with New Japan or know much about New Japan to realize that Naito is a big deal to this AEW audience because Moxley would lose to him on this pay-per-view. And if that's the case, you have reestablished Naito as a force for the Western audience, but he's already a strong force in the Japanese world. And you may just be strengthening the top level of New Japan Pro Wrestling by doing the belt here and then having Naito hold the belt through to Wrestle Kingdom or beyond. That's the best that I can come up with about why they would do Moxley and Naito in the States in order to just strengthen the top guy for the promotion, for the American perception.
Well, as Shark mentions, you get the most eyes on a title change with the one true star you have left. My point on that is most eyes for who? Not paying customers for New Japan. You're getting the most of the AEW fans watching, which isn't really New Japan's. Doesn't really help New Japan's bottom line. Although I know they get a chunk of the Forbidden Door pay-per-view, but it's not in front of your own customers. That's odd. It's in front of Tony Khan's customers, which is okay. And I don't know if you're going to put Naito on strong cards, which they kind of said they weren't going to do as much of, then it's puzzling to me too. It's puzzling.
Here's the thing. Brad put something. That's if Naito wins it. Mox could retain to drop to Zack Sabre Jr. or Shooter to someone else.
Yeah, that's possible.
My hiccup here is you don't do the match if Naito isn't going to win. Naito is your top star in New Japan, and he can't be losing twice to the same guy in AEW without a long-term plan to rehabilitate him as the top guy. And you don't really have that time with Naito to do that.
And they need Naito to be the top guy. He moves the needle. Yeah.
The if Naito wins is oh my God, if Naito wins, it's entirely what Brad's saying is entirely plausible. But I refuse to just accept it as a reality because going that route just feels like the complete antithesis of what New Japan is trying to do, even with their 10-point plan / keep the promotion strong. That's the part for me that I'm I can't I can't figure out how you get from point A to point B by going that route, but you can go that route.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, Dunson says they won't. He doesn't think they'll do Mox versus Zach in Japan. They won't have two gaijins main eventing a match. I'm kind of leaning toward it's. I think Naito's needs to be in the main event mix, and if, like he said, if he loses to Mox twice, then that's a little bit trickier than he used to be. And I just don't think they want Naito losing a whole lot. So they just never have.
They talked about his losing streak going into the match tonight with Callum Newman. They talked about how he's lost the last 3 out of his 4 matches, and he's got a match with Jake Lee that presumably, I could see him losing to Jake Lee and then winning the title and then running back a match with Jake Lee for the title afterwards. Yeah,
that's very, very possible. And Dustin, Mox is nowhere near that level of a draw. Naito is, especially when Wrestle Kingdom comes. That's really what they have to start thinking about. And Mox is great for New Japan, and he works as a foreigner. But yeah, you're going to have some sort of Japanese star on top, and that's Naito right now. And so he either needs to go into the G1 as champion so that the G1 champion can face Naito, or Naito needs to be part of the G1, needs to win the G1 so that he can face the champion, because you got to get him in there. Especially if it's one night Wrestle Kingdom, that means there's only one main event, not two. And he needs to be a part of it. He's the guy that moves the needle more than anybody else in that company. And so
here's also a reality that no one has actually thought about yet. This might have been Mox's last night in Japan for a very long time.
Maybe, but maybe not. I mean, that's up to Mox. Remember, with his contract, that's up to him.
But that's he still has to do the dates with AEW first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have basically removed him from any other programs with AEW while he's had this run. He essentially got iced for the time he won that tag match with Claudio versus FTR at Revolution until he won the title. And then it exclusively became like IWGP title orbiting kind of thing. He drops that title. He immediately becomes free to do other programs. He will not. I can't see him being in the G1 with only 20 people there. I really don't. I feel like there's not a whole lot of room for that there. So maybe the next time we see him is August 30th and Capital Collision. But from what I'm talking to some other people, it feels like the new emphasized star from AEW that's going to be there could be Mercedes Moné and not Jon Moxley.
Yeah, because she'll be the strong women's champion at that point.
Yeah, and if she's the strong women's champion, she's going to be doing those dates on Saturdays while she's doing Dynamites on Wednesdays.
Let's do some supposing over here in the comments. Brad mentions, selfishly, I would like to see Naito win, since he'll be there, and Naito is my favorite current wrestler, so I hope you're right. So do I. But I understand, and Shark just said AEW and NJ probably agreed on this Mox title reign ending with Naito getting his win back from the start. I would hope so from New Japan's perspective. And Shark also mentions that Naito should be the champion, and then Zach, Umino, Tsuji, or whoever else should be the guy that goes to face him. Yeah, that's kind of what I think too. And I think that's a better story for selling a dome card. It'll likely be a first-time champion dethroning Naito at Wrestle Kingdom. That's to me feels like the story that they're trying to tell here, was whether it's Tsuji, whether it's Umino, whether it's Zach, somebody stepping up to challenge Naito is the thought on that.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Should we talk about this main event? This fantastic.
Now we can get to the main event.
Now that we have passed through the forbidden portal back to New Japan.
The best of Super Junior finals. Now we can talk about Ishimori and Despe. So there was a buzz in the crowd for this match right off the bat. We talked about how somehow they managed to maneuver this so there are two sentimental favorites in this match. The crowd really took a liking to Ishimori by the end of the Super Junior tournament. And then Desperado has been the sentimental favorite as the guy who has been the bridesmaid, but not the bride, over and over again. So the match was fantastic. I mean, these two are two of the very best juniors in the world. They worked toward their submissions. Ishimori worked on the arm for the bone lock. Despe with that knee breaker move that looks killer. Love that. And then numero dos. Not a lot of heel mannerisms for Ishimori, but there were a few. Of course, he used the exposed turnbuckle. He even used a low blow one time when Red Shoes was distracted, almost got run into, and he was kind of covering up, and Ishimori took the opportunity to hit a low blow there. And this match built, it went 23-36 and just ramped up and up and up. These are two of the best at this. And it really did have that feel where these guys just got closer and closer and closer to either getting a tap or closer to that finish. And the near falls just felt like they were nearer by the minute. And finally, El Desperado gets the pinche driver, the pinche loco, and then that was the win and the big pop. It was an excellent match. So smooth is the other thing. These two were just so smooth in the ring against each other. The win got, like I mentioned, a big pop. There were even some tears being shed in the crowd. They showed a couple
I
of
might have
fans
shed a tear too when I watched this. I was just like, I got a little happy. I got a little joyful.
It was a long time coming. This has been the whale the quest, the all-time quest, the white whale for El Desperado. Finally, he's held the junior title. He's beaten Hiromu Takahashi at Wrestle Kingdom. He hasn't won a Super Juniors until today. He finally did. And he was just grinning ear to ear when he finally did win it. They presented him with the trophy and the flag. He even got a fist bump from Taiji Ishimori. Not the handshake I predicted, but he got the fist bump from Ishimori. A little bit of respect there. And
did that warm your cold, dead heart a little bit?
It did. And it gave me a little bit of hope that there might be a new coat of paint coming for Taiji Ishimori. I'm hoping because, that little no man's land between House of Torture and the War Dogs is no place to be right now. Kenta, Chase Owens, Ishimori, they're all lost in the woods and they all need something different. And Ishimori especially is just too talented to be a guy. This
cruising
is
through fitness club.
One of the very best guys. That's what Ishimori is. And I think it's time. And the crowd will be with it. And the one thing this thing proved is if they go that direction with Ishimori, the crowd will go with him. Desperado began his speech, gave credit to Ishimori. He was then interrupted by Sho, who came out with a belt saying, this how can you be the best? I'm the champion. Desperado said, you can't be the best. You didn't even make the playoffs here. Challenged him, and in a back and forth that Chris Charlton eventually just gave up on. So we'll just have to read the subtitles on the backstage comments where they do the post-match, post-main event translation as well. But what we did get from that is that Despe challenged him to a steel cage match for the title match. Did not say specifically when, at least in the ring, that Chris Charlton translated. Did not mention exactly when that match would take place or if it would be in a steel cage. But Jeremy, why in the world would you even mention that if you weren't going to do it? So it sounds like we're going to get steel cage, Sho, and Despe for the junior title eventually. But a terrific main event, a great emotional response. This was a lot of fun.
I was half expecting them to announce it at the main event tomorrow night. Seriously. Like, through the middle of the day, like, you want to do this? Let's do this tomorrow night at the Despe Invitational. And then, like, just all of a sudden, you get announced the night before. You got a main event of Sho versus Desperado in a steel cage for the IWGP Junior.
I don't think that's what's happening.
$22.99. Pay for it. I would have. I've already paid for it, so I would have done it. But that's fine. We talked about this tournament for the last 7 weeks. When we started this tournament, I told you I did not think Desperado was going to win this thing because he had that show the next night, and I just feel like they don't do that kind of thing where they just put everything on a rocket on one guy for like one weekend. It's just doesn't feel like the thing that they do until that they do it with Desperado tonight, so it was fantastic to see. I did get a little emotional watching it because I feel like I go back to the 2020 match with the mask coming off and just realize like I am all in on this guy, and just watching the journey, the New Japan Strong shows with him and Moxley and Jun Kasai last year, all the things that he has done to earn the loyalty and love of the New Japan audience. And this was his night, and he put on a star-making performance that I hope enough people truly hear how fantastic the Best of the Super Juniors was this year. We have a lot of people in the know telling us, this was a really great tournament, but like it just didn't really seem to catch on to people outside of like the people who are hardcore following Japanese wrestling. So I hope the word gets out about how great this tournament was. I hope that word gets out about how great Desperado and Ishimori both were. I think this both brought them up to a level that they weren't at before, and they were already both high-level people. It's like Ishimori became as beloved by the crowd that I've seen in a long time with that hand fist bump thing that they did on the side of the ring, and I was so happy for you when I saw that, man. I was very, very happy for you personally, because I know that you've been advocating for the Ishimori face turn, and I see it. I see all the things. I want Desperado to succeed. I am eminently happy that he is now the ace, and now the narrative is you got to beat Desperado, not can Desperado beat this guy. And that is a huge shift in the narrative for him. It is a positive shift for the way we discuss his matches. We were all in on this guy. We were all in on both of these guys for a very, very long time. And I'm just very, very glad that more people are going to be able to join that vehicle with us.
The reason Desperado was my pick before the tournament started was I just felt it was time for him. One, it was the right timing for it. The other thing I thought was Hiromu has dominated this division. This is the Hiromu Takahashi era in junior heavyweight wrestling in New Japan. And I thought that there have been other guys who have had eras. Tiger Mask, Jushin Liger certainly had an era. They also had rivals and a key guy. So Tiger Mask had Dynamite Kid. And Liger had the Black Tiger when it was Eddie Guerrero, for instance. There were others for Liger because Liger's era was so long. He had several of them, actually. But the one I remember is Eddie, that Black Tiger Liger matches and things. If Desperado wins this thing and becomes what you just said, not can Desperado beat this guy, but now Desperado's the guy you got to beat. Then you have that Black Tiger to Liger. You have that Dynamite Kid to Tiger Mask. Now there are two. It's not just Hiromu's era anymore. And I'm not saying that Hiromu needs to move away. I don't think so. I still think he's one of the best on earth, but it helps a lot to have another guy there, and they don't have to just focus on the one. Desperado is now fully made as a guy who has main evented one of the biggest shows of the year. He has won the Super Juniors. He's already won all the junior heavyweight titles. This is a guy that can make other people now. And for a while, Hiromu was the only guy that can make someone really in New Japan for a long time. And so this is the final elevation that I think he needed, and that I think he's perfectly capable of carrying that role, which is not easy to do. Being the guy is challenging. That's why there aren't that many of them. But I think Desperado is talented enough to pull it off. And he has some of the people there. Brad was saying that Kathy was watching and got so into it that she was cheering Despy hardcore by the end. Shark just said Ishimori's my guy. He can forever say he main evented Dominion. Absolutely. And I really hope he gets something great to sink his teeth into wherever his story is headed. Just good feelings, good vibes all around. The streamer's coming down on him. He's holding the trophy. He's smiling on the way out. The crowd was happy. This is a feel-good moment.
Yeah, it really was. It was absolutely feel-good moment. I will be thinking about this match probably for a long time. And I do find it very, very clever that they managed to pivot Hiromu into a completely different program where he already has a belt. There's no ambiguity. Desperado is the better guy than Hiromu right now in the junior heavyweight division, and Hiromu has moved on to a different division where he can succeed instead.
Yeah, and Sharks just mentions Despe had to win, really, as much as I would have loved Ishimori to win personally. Even though I do love Despe, and I know almost rooting for Despe. It's an interesting thing, too, isn't it? If you turn, it doesn't have to be next week, but if you eventually turn Ishimori babyface, Ishimori can have his turn next year as the baby, and just show that whole move paid off. That's a story, too, that they could tell.
You got Watto coming back. You got Ishimori. Yeah. You got a bunch of people. Yo and Taguchi, they're injured, but everyone has a motivation that is different than it was 3 weeks ago, and I find it really interesting.
Brad mentions when people talk aura, Desperado's picture is right there. He just has a cool factor to him, and he really has made the most of that personality. Not very many people, we joked about this, didn't we, Jeremy, not too long ago, that who gets a pop from a crowd out of tucking a towel into his trunks. But he did when it was the Despawato thing. I mean, that whole odd couple thing worked. He made it work. But because of that whole thing where he looks annoyed when he has to do a handshake or a fist bump, he's like, oh, for the love of God, I got to do all that. But you know that it's there within him. So when he does it, it's the payoff, and he does have a cool factor to him that works. Yeah, and Dunstan says Despay's rise after his injury in 2019 should be studied. It's been. I was on board with him before because I just thought when he was teaming with Kanemaru, within Suzuki-gun, I just thought, boy, this guy's crisp. Just everything he does just looks good. And I really thought he was a talented dude, but it wasn't his time. Kushida was still on top at that point for the most part. There were others. And I just thought that he was biding his time down there, and he made the most of it when it was time finally. And he's
now
had a few time. He's had a few setbacks, but he said the next best Super Junior is going to be wild with the growth of the young guys returning from injury. And don't forget, Kosei Fujita's era is coming probably sooner than we maybe imagined too. That's another guy who's just uber talented. And overall, I give the show a 7 out of 10 from Dunstan. It was good, just not as memorable compared to last year's. But again, I think that this one is at least, here's the point in favor of it for me, is that it points to a direction that New Japan has an idea where it's going that wasn't there in March when I think the company was just confused. So I said that this would go a long way toward my approach to New Japan. Am I approaching this with optimism or with skepticism for the rest of 2024? I'm back to the optimistic thing right now because I feel like there is a map. I feel like they know where they want to go. Now, injuries could throw all that off. There's no question about it. You never know. Shoulder separation, we're right back where we started sometimes. But I do feel like they have something in mind for us that's probably going to be pretty good if it works out the way they want it to. A key is fair, though. We've had a lot of comments about it over here. Our audience is right. They need some new blood in that tag team division. That needs to be the next priority. We know now junior heavyweight division's in great shape. No question about that. They have some sort of direction probably for the G1 with this format. Makes me think that they have this thing pretty much mapped out and how they want it to go. But that would be the next thing for me is let's get this tag team division taken care of because it's been in a sickly state for a little while. But that's the next priority for me.
No, I felt good about the whole show. You start it at first match. I like that match. Second match. I like that match. Third match. I like that match. That went through the entire show. It was a good show. It was not a show of the year in any way, shape, or form, but the matches that were top level, the Kabashii and the Desperado Ishimori match, you could match up against the best matches on any pay-per-view or PLE. It was just, the floor was high, but the ceiling was low for a lot of these matches is the best way that I can put it. I enjoyed it. It was a great show. And like you said, it puts me in a good mood, feeling optimistic about the immediate future of New Japan.
And Shark mentions it here. At least a great tag team has the belts. That's step one. We have a good team with the titles. And by the way, what did you think of this? The word that Ricochet is going to be leaving WWE. Do you think he'll be going over? He's been here before. It's been a long time. But I don't see him like signing on long term with New Japan as a regular. But I certainly wouldn't mind him popping over every once in a while. Huh?
I got my news or noise little like added.
You think this is noise?
News. I think this is noise. I think it's
he's going to resign early.
I think it's way too early. I think, you could homeboy needs somebody talking to him about how to do leverage, and maybe part of this leverage is like, hey, I'm going to leave, so either value me, pay me more, or, I'm putting that dog whistle out there. And I don't know what this is, but, if he's creatively unfulfilled, he needs to advocate for himself and find a better place to do it. If he is creatively unfulfilled, he will likely not be making as much money as he is making in WWE. But he has a relationship. He has roots there. There's a lot of things that make it very, very attractive for him to stick around. While at the same time, this is very interesting leverage on his part if he plays this right.
It's miraculous, though, Jeremy. All those years ago when he and Will Ospreay had their match in the Best of the Super Junior tournament at Corrigan Hall, they killed the business. Don't you remember? They killed it. All those people got on the internet and said, "End of pro wrestling. It's dead as a doornail." What are we gonna? I don't know what we've been watching the last 7 or 8 years. I'm not sure. It can't be pro wrestling that was killed by Ricochet and Will Ospreay.
All that flippy shit, dude. They don't know how to storytell. One more comment. Let's do the Flaming Shark. I mean, I don't think WWE breaks the bank for Ricochet. Triple H likes him, but I don't think WWE really has a strong idea of what to do with him. I'd say it's 50-50 whether he stays or goes. I think 50-50 is fine for whatever reason that you want to come up with. A lot of aggregators made a little bit of scratch when people clicked on that link that said Ricochet is leaving WWE. But until the minute he steps out the door from WWE and shows up at another promotion, this is all noise to me.
And let's make it clear, too. There are two competing companies in North America. If your contract is coming up, you are a fool to announce, I am going to re-sign with the company I'm signing for. It's only smart to try to play them against each other, and at least try to get them to bid against each other a little bit.
These companies want to look good against each other, signing free agents that have left a company. Once you leave a company, you're a free agent, and then the company can say they signed the hottest free agent. It's all gamesmanship.
Oh yeah. You're absolutely a fool if you stake yourself to one flag too much. I mean, this just play them off against each other. This is the point of competition. It benefits the wrestlers. Finally, something that benefits the wrestlers in this industry, and that's competition. We got it right now. He'd be silly to just fold up like that. So,
all right, let's start talking about WWE. There's an NXT PLE in a few hours. Just get us out of here.
All right. Well, the point is we've done 90 minutes. We talked about Dominion. I want to say thank you to everybody that watched. Of course, we're going to be back on Thursday. We're going to be talking about the Despae Invitational Mystery Vortex. We can't preview it. We don't even know who's going to be at the thing except one guy. So we'll be taking a look at that on Thursday. We'll also be looking ahead to any other announcements that are coming as we approach things like All Together, Forbidden Door, Soul, a lot of big events coming up, and of course we'll have plenty to talk about with this new
G1 Invitational Tournament.
With that in mind, thank you once again for spending your time with us here on a special edition on Sunday, and we will talk to you all again at a regular time on Thursday real soon.